Welcome to Grand Finals, everyone. It has been such a fun Worlds. Thanks for spending it with me, and we'll have a ton of content after Worlds, so make sure you're subbed to this channel. The best is yet to come. This is the Grand Finals, BLG versus T1. Spoilers for that match if you haven't seen it yet. I mean, what an amazing Worlds this has been. Tons of upsets, really exciting games, and this is probably one of the most exciting Grand Finals matches we've had in a long time. Going to 5 games, teams looking incredibly close in power level. But the most important thing is that T1 does bring home the back-to-back World Championship title with the exact same roster. Really impressive stuff from them. That said, this series was on a knife's edge multiple times. T1 one mistake away from losing the entire championship on multiple occasions. So let's jump into it. Great start from BLG in game 1. T1 has usually been the early game kings this knockout stage, but BLG getting here a third pick before 6 minutes, kind of ignoring the grubs and all focusing on carry here. Then they'll just go up and take the grubs later. T1 loves taking grubs more than anything in this world. I wouldn't be surprised if they had TP'd Faker up here from the bot lane, but maybe because they're down so much, they just give up the grubs. But you give up the grubs at your own peril in this series. This pretty bad from On because they are just a Rel and an Ashe, and this is a Mega Gnar, and Mega Gnar beats Ashe like 3 times over, and just having a Rel there is not enough. So they'll see that this TP is coming in, but honestly, even if this TP doesn't come in, I don't think Ashe and Rel are beating Mega Gnar. You can see how much damage comes down. He just melts the Rel instantly. Then here we have a play very reminiscent of what we saw against Gen G, where they would kind of clump mid and kind of dive you, but that was when they would have big early game advantages over Gen G. Here they're behind, and we see that that does not work so well. Even though they send all 5 mid, Elk catches them out with the ultimate, and then just Elk gets so much damage down on Zeus before this fight really collapses. T1 is like, we have 5, nothing can go wrong, but BLG also have 5, and their 5 is on the outside. So like StarCraft 2, you're always at an advantage if you have the concave, if you're on the outside here, because all of your spells hit all of them, and their spells get split up among the 5 of you. So T1, there's just no way for them to win this fight from this position. No micro in the world is going to save you. So just really good play from BLG there. And Gnar TPs from the top lane down to save Faker, and then Guma's also here, so they end up really overloading onto Bin. So they do save Faker and they kill Bin, but they leave 4 people uncontested in the top lane. It really is like BLG is out T1ing T1 this game. This is totally the type of thing that T1 would do to Gen G. Say, you know, send a bunch over here, 4 or 5 of us are going to push down the towers with the Void Grubs. We see that Knight actually starts the Sejuani ultimate before the Caitlyn even starts the E, so this is a pure prediction ultimate. He thinks that Caitlyn could E out, or she could flash out, and predicts that she will, and he catches her perfectly, so really beautiful from Knight there. And so at this point, I was feeling great, because BLG looked dominant. They took everything that T1 is known for, macro, getting the early grubs, and winning the early game, and they just did it better than T1. So at this point, I was like, wait, is BLG going to 3-0 this? And then in game 2, Guma dies in the level 1 again. And so again, T1 sacrificing the most important part of their game usually, which is that strong early game. But T1 do a really great job, recover the early game. They're actually up in kills now. And they group all 5 on the Void Grubs, which they love to do. And BLG just doesn't really want to take this fight. I think because Bin is still level 4, got really behind with those lane swaps. And so they don't feel like they can take this 5v5. But what that does mean is that you have to really be ready to fight for the next 3 grubs, because you do not want to go down 6 grubs against T1. Just like against Gen G, these early games are so important. These grubs are so powerful. This is basically the game deciding fight at 8 minutes. 5-man stack T1. And the thing you always want to keep in mind in fights like this, if you're the BLG, is you gotta stay under the turret. The minute you leave the turret, you lose any defender's advantage that you had. So we see here that Knight kind of throws this entire fight because he makes the cardinal mistake, which is that he pulls the fight away from the turret. He's pulling his entire team away from the protection of the turret, starting a fight right here where they have no turret advantage. Once Knight pulls everybody in, then Keria can pull here, and Zeus can get the multi-man knock-up on the Ornn. And you can see the turret's not really hitting anything because Knight pulled the fight way too far away. Because right here, there's actually turret aggro on Gumayushi, so you just want to take this fight slow. You don't have to rush from Knight. And then once Knight pushes too far, of course, the execution from T1 is perfection. Not only do they have the pull into the multi-man knockup here, but then they have Gumiyushi pulling Keria in, flash out of the tower aggro, and then throw Keria into Galio to cancel Knight's Galio ultimate. So just flawless execution from T1 to punish that overstep by Knight. And the game is just over here because now they're 2k gold up. So how do you stop T1 from grouping as 5, taking the 6 grubs? They're 2k gold up, you can't fight them. Then they'll all group and take your top tower, your bot tower, your mid tower. It's all unstoppable at this point, right? So you have to win these early games against T1 because they showed during Gen G, you give them those 6 grubs and 2k in the early game, you're done. And then everyone groups to push down the top turret. On tries to get this pick out, and June really messes up here because he jumps in and he actually knocks Faker back, who's their target, with the R. Maybe it was intentional, thinking that he could win this 5v4, or maybe it was an accident. He thought he had autoed the Sylas, but in any case, it does not work out well. Once again, the execution from T1 is just flawless, not to mention the fact that they're 3.5k gold up. Ornn R comes in, knock up. The Kalista R comes in, knock up. The Renata R comes in, berserk. Those 3 people are just all chain CC'd for like 5 seconds. Flawless from T1. And then here the game's over, but just kind of a fun interaction. They're trying to kind of sneak this pick on Faker. And Galio has the TP up. And so they go in on Faker and they drop this ward so that Galio can TP in. And so why doesn't Galio TP in? Because Nocturne R has shut off the lights. You can't TP during Nocturne R. And so there's no way for Galio to ult in or teleport in because of the Nocturne. The only time Nocturne does something useful, you won't hear me compliment Nocturne very much, but I thought that was a pretty fun interaction there. So now this was really exciting because it's like, whoa, this game is back and forth. T1 dominated BLG pretty much as BLG dominated T1, so we just have no idea where the series is going to go. Here, right as grubs are spawning, they have this 3-man gank on Faker, uncancelable knockup from the Blitzcrank, and this is huge because it means they're going to get the grubs. And then, right before the second set of grubs are spawning, BLG gank the top lane here on Zeus. And so they've won a second early game up 1.7k, and they're really pressing their early game using these advantages to get the picks before the grubs and securing the grubs. Here, Blitzcrank, flash, hook in onto Vi, and really bad from Faker here because this isn't even really a 2v3 because Owner just used his spells to escape. So this is really a 1v3 from Faker, so just really sloppy play from Faker there. And so if you're starting to think, hey, it really looks like whichever team wins the early game and gets the 6 grubs wins the game, you're starting to get it because that is what has happened, not just in these 3 games, but in all 4 games against Gen G. Whichever team got more grubs won the game. It's going to happen 7 times in a row with this game. They might as well rename this game Grub League of Legend Grubs because it is so much about the grubs. Now BLG gets to be the one to take their 5 grubs, group all top lane, and with no counterplay, melt down all their turrets. Aren't grubs fun, everyone? Right after taking that top turret, BLG are up 4.7k gold at 14 minutes. That's game over. Now, if you were a professional coach, then you would hopefully notice whichever team got the grubs won the game. So we should probably try to take the grubs and maybe draft a comp that will help us do it. A good early team fighting comp. And so if you guess that BLG would lock in Smolder Ziggs for their early game comp, you get 100 points. Gnar, who's very difficult to guarantee, will be on at the exact team fight at the grubs. Smolder, who's very weak until 20 minutes. Ziggs, who's mostly good at pushing towers and clearing waves. On the other hand, we have Sylas, amazing early game skirmisher. Ashe, maybe the best early game AD carry. Renata, one of the best 5v5 team fighters at level 6. Poppy, who can knock people out of the grub fight so that they can win the grubs. And Rumble, who's a great team fighter as well. Which of these teams do you think is planning to group 5 at grubs? And which of these teams somehow does not get that you need to win grubs even after it happening 7 games in a row? And so somehow through better map play, BLG actually get an advantage in the early game despite having a Smolder. That means they're going to win the championship because they're going to get the grubs. We just killed Zeus and grubs are spawning right now. And we can see that Sejuani, she can just cook it through the river. Just go take the grubs. Sejuani, go through the river. Sejuani, no. See how Sejuani could just be going up the river here? So Sejuani would be at the mid lane right now, and about now Sejuani would be going into the river to contest the grubs, and they could be taking the grubs right now. And so this is just more confirmation, if the draft wasn't clear, that BLG just doesn't get the memo of how important the grubs are, because they're just not prioritizing them. But it's no problem. You let T1 get the top side objectives, BLG will get the bot side objectives. Okay, maybe we'll let T1 get the top side and the bot side objectives. Everything's fine. BLG is still up in gold. We can still stop them from taking the second set of grubs. They won't be able to have that pushing power. We're ahead in gold. The smolder will be a lock in the late game. BLG just won worlds because this is the third victory. All we have to do is not die before grubs. Oh no, Elk. I know what you're saying. Sizable brain. It doesn't matter if he flashes away. Faker has flash too, and he'll just flash after him. You can't dodge W. No, you can't dodge W. But what's this? Right here? Right here? Right here? Is this a skill shot that Elk can flash out of the way? Because what happens when Faker hits this skill shot is not only the skill shot damage, but Silas gets another empowered auto. So Elk flashing here saves him 2 points of damage, and we see that how close this dive is. Elk flashing way too late. If he had 2 more hits on him, he probably would have survived that dive. But T1 is too low on Faker to get the grubs, so there's still a chance. We're back 5 on the map. So BLG, we just have to group 5 and take the grubs, and we will win the championship. Group 5 and take the grubs. Let's fight for grubs. We have even in gold. Let's fight for the grubs. And T1 is taking all 6 grubs with 2 people. So here On kind of has a choice. He can kind of go to the right and they can maybe kill Zeus, but they have to sacrifice Elk, or he can turn and try to have one huge team fight, which is high risk, high reward. He decides to force the fight, but it doesn't go well because Elk is your only damage, is just completely blasted, and perfect execution from T1 in this fight. And that's a much riskier play because if the full fight doesn't go well for you, you're losing 2-3 kills. And here we see the grub power. It's not about the fight. After they got those kills, they were 300 gold up. After they get the plates in the tower, they're 1.5k gold up. So it's not about the kills. That's not how T1 is gaining these gold advantages. It's the plates and the towers from the 6 grubs. According to the script, after you get the grubs, you group 4 or 5 top and you melt down the top turret. But Bin actually flips the script on the Mega Gnar, T1 getting a little complacent with how easy it is to burn the towers down with the grubs. Owner and Guma go a little too far forward, and Mega Gnar back under the turret. Amazing play from Bin there. But you don't get rid of grubs by winning one fight. This isn't a Baron buff. We see grubs grubbing here in the mid lane. Faker and Zeus just burning this mid lane tower down. Grubs grubbing back in the top lane. Zeus taking that turret down. But before the 4th dragon fight is the most memorable play of the entire tournament. Faker going god mode on this flank, taking the Recon R, triggering it, Proto Belt in, flash in here, and then just the loyalty and the trust from T1. Carry a flash ultimate follow-up, and then Poppy here, flash R knock up onto 3. Just everyone following Faker through the gates of hell. BLG try to do what they did earlier, but this time there's no Mega Gnar, that's just a mini Gnar, and so they spend everything on this flank. But who's your follow-up on Sejuani and Rakan? This is Ziggs and mini Gnar. These are poke champs. These are not all-in, dive you, burst you down champs, so they're just way too slow, and they can't win that fight. And T1 is so rich at this point that Guma can just 1v1 the Smolder on the Ashe. Ice beats fire, baby. And now, despite BLG looking so dominant in game 1 and 3, I am very worried because it looks like BLG just doesn't understand the importance of the early game at all. Not to mention, they seem to have triggered that part in the Faker boss fight when the boss comes back angrier and stronger. And then BLG just completely fall apart in this game 5 draft. I mean, picking Kai'Sa, Ahri, 2 assassin champs into 2 tanks, that's crazy. Who are you assassinating? And then picking Jarvan into 3 tanks, that's even crazier. Jarvan is a dive champ. There's no one to dive on this team. The one AD carry they have is the anti-dive AD carry. This is the least diveable team I've ever seen, and they draft a 3rd dive champ. What are BLG thinking? Everyone was trolling the T1, like, how are they going to do damage with these 4 tanks? It's like, how is BLG going to do damage against 4 tanks with only assassin champs? Now, to BLG's credit, they bring 5 to the first scrub fight to match the T1 5. On kind of bungles this engage, flash misses the Q, knockdown onto no one because owner flashes out. At the same time, Eyes on Knight when he uses R, he actually triggers the Void Grubs to start attacking Elk. That means here, when Elk uses Q, you see most of the damage goes onto the Void Grubs rather than onto Owner. So it's just a complete disaster from BLG in this early 5v5. And then BLG manages to throw away this 4-person dive on Faker. And so you want to be thinking, what am I going to do after he flashes? Well, if I'm Ahri, I'll save my charm until after he flashes. But instead, Ahri burns the charm to end his taunt early. That means that once he flashes away here out of the Jarvan engage, they have nothing left to follow up. Somehow the bot lane has a 40 CS lead at 8:45. I don't even want to know what macro nonsense was happening from Elk here, but it's really bad. Just trust that. But shockingly, against all odds, Knight channels his inner Faker, turns on here, and they find this phenomenal gank onto T1. And they get 2 kills despite having a terrible early game, and this is their chance. BLG might have brought this game back and won the entire tournament because they just killed 2 right before grubs are spawning. They can send all 4 to grubs, take the grubs, deny the 6 grubs from T1, and possibly win this game because we literally don't know if T1 can win a game without grubs. No, wait, Y is on backing. And Knight's backing with no TP up. At this point, I'm out. 8 games they've lost because they didn't have the grubs. They get a perfect opportunity to catch up in this game by getting the 3 grubs, and they just throw it away. I'm out. I can't do it anymore. I'm a T1 fan. I cannot do any more teams that seem to win just solely on player skill and micro ability. T1 has out macroed Gen G and BLG so hard 9 games in a row. I can't do it anymore. I'm a T1 fan. These Gen G and BLG coaches should be fired. T1 grubs, take the turret, grubs grubbing, bursting down the tier 2 turret. But here I was absolutely shocked that despite having 5 grubs, BLG managed to keep the gold within 700 gold. BLG could still win the entire championship. LPL go, and then on jumps onto their 2 strongest people as level 9 and dies instantly. And then how is BLG still in this game after inting so many times? There's no way their assassin comp can actually get onto Guma, get the R out, get the flash out, and now Jax is on Guma, gets the cleanse out. They actually got Guma. Their assassin team actually did what it's supposed to do, and they got 2 kills, and they're winning this team fight, and they could go get Baron, and BLG is going to win the entire tournament despite doing everything in their power to lose. And this is when Bin teleports here, gives up their numbers advantage. Now this 3v3 is losing because they're at very low health, and Knight just walks straight too close to Faker, who capitalizes with the flash taunt, and they are just popped. And T1, your world champions, and I'm not upset at all because look at what BLG did this game. Oh my god, you could tell they were so nervous because it was a game 5, and this is when people talk about the T1 clutch factor, that they stay calm even game 5 in a world championship. And so I'm happy for T1. I just think that the BLG coach needs to be fired. And we have to say goodbye to BLG, and T1 are the champions. Congrats to T1. What an amazing game. So evenly matched, back and forth. Didn't know what's going to happen. From BLG's side, a lot of shakiness from On. Elk never really showed up. All tournament in the videos I've been saying, Elk will show up one of these days. When will Elk show up? He kind of went the entire tournament without ever super showing up, which is sad. On T1's side, of course, Faker showed up hugely in that finals. And Keria, I think, did really well as well. I would not argue with someone saying Keria was by far the best support in the tournament, just because not only did he make some great plays, but you just didn't really notice him, which means he wasn't constantly inting, which automatically makes him way better than On, and Lehens, and Crisp, and all the other supports that were in the top 8. They were very noticeably cracking under that finals pressure. T1 won more games, but I think the BLG wins were more dominating than the T1 wins, so it was perfectly even. And I don't think it required any T1 magic to win. Yes, Faker stepped up in some of those games, but he also played kind of bad in some of those games. BLG has not really played any better earlier in the tournament than they played here. I think this was one of their best series, and T1 had been playing great all tournament. So it was pretty much exactly as close as I predicted going into it, without requiring BLG to choke at Worlds or T1 to super overperform at Worlds. I'm very proud of my prediction that BLG would win. I mean, BLG had the advantage up until game 3. They were a hair away from winning in both game 4 and game 5, in my opinion. And like, I don't know what you guys want me to do. Was I supposed to predict that the BLG coach, after seeing Grubs win 6, 7, 8, 9 times, just says, oh, don't worry about the early game. You guys will catch up in the late game. Like I can't predict that. I think it would be foolish to predict that. That's what happened, but it shouldn't have, right? So I'm very proud of the predictions I made. I would have made them again. It didn't work out for us this year, but it will work out for us in the future. So make sure you stay subscribed to this channel because we've got a ton of great content coming. A video about T1's run at Worlds and all the things they did right to win this championship, things that we can learn from for next time. More deep dives, more analysis of LCK, LPL matches in the spring. More fiddling with our tier list, and together, by knowing the players, by knowing the teams, by knowing the champions, we will be even better prepared for next year, 2025 Worlds, Pick'em, Crystal Ball, and analysis. So I hope you'll all join me on that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all soon.